All right, Shalom. I want to start off by giving all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakak Wadash. I'd like to give double honors unto the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who I learned this truth from. And I'd like to say peace and salutations unto the hopefully elect. And today is Monday, May 19th, 2025, Missile Monday. And I have this article from Reuters. And it says, Russia plans to launch intercontinental ballistic missile, Kayev says. So I'm just going to go into this article and bring out a few scriptures. Lord willing, this lesson is edifying, straight to the point. And it says, Ukraine's military intelligence agency said on Sunday, Russia planned to conduct a training and combat launch of an intercontinental ballistic missile to intimidate Ukraine and the West. The overnight launch was ordered to be implemented from Russia's Sverdlovsk region. The GUR agency said in a statement on the Telegram app. It added the flight range for the missile was more than 10,000 kilometers, or 6,200 miles. Says in order to demonstratively pressure and intimidate Ukraine and also EU and NATO member states, the aggressor state of Russia intends to make a training and combat launch of the RS-24 intercontinental ballistic missile from the RS complex, GOR said in a statement, and the RS-24 would be, this right here, So continuing, it says there was no immediate comment from Russia on the Ukrainian military intelligence statement. Russia does not answer questions about its plans to test, launch nuclear missiles, the details of which it classifies as a military secret, although it issues statements after such launches. More than 3 years into the war against Russia, Ukraine is under enormous pressure as Russia seeks frontline gains in the Ukrainian east, and diplomatic efforts to end the war so far have yielded no results. And again, just like, I pretty much said in my last video, concerning Ukraine, they might as well let Russia, take over, because again, Ukraine used to be a part of Russia. It was a part of, the old USSR, so technically, what Putin is trying to do, he's just trying to take back over that land, but again, Zelensky, doesn't want that. But pretty much, again, I guess Russia is, just ready to send a nuke over there from what it's looking like, man. And that wouldn't be good for Ukraine or Russia. But again, this is the time that we're in, man. Russia is ready to send a nuke to, Ukraine. Then you still have India and Pakistan, they're ready, to send nukes toward each other. And again, it's the same situation. Pakistan is literally a part of the land of India, so them sending nukes back and forth to each other wouldn't be good. But at the end of the day, once World War III, finally heats up, and it's in its full force and it's a full-fledged hot war, then we'll see what happens, because again, we know that this war is primarily going to be between, Russia and the United States. But again, these smaller nations, are going to draw these two major nations into this conflict, So I'm going to start with the book of Ezekiel, chapter 38, and I'll start at verse 1. And it says, And the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Gog, the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and prophesy against him, and say, Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, Behold, I am against thee, O Gog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. And this is the point I want to get in verse 4. It says, and I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws and will bring thee forth and all thine armies, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords. And then, the latter verses is going into, how Russia is going to be a guard, unto its allies, those different, Arab nations, the UAE as a whole, the United Arab Emirates, a couple of, Elamite nations, so-called East Indians, then, a couple of Hamite nations, all of these nations that, are in league with Russia. Russia's going to be a guard unto them. But the main point is that, verse 4, the Lord has put hooks into the jaws, meaning he's turning them back. He's putting that old USSR spirit back on Russia, henceforth, why they're, so aggressive, which is why Putin wants to take back over that land, because Ukraine, not only is a part of, or was a part of the old USSR, it's a part of the landmass of Russia as well, So again, that's what, the Lord is doing. It's putting that old spirit back on them, man. That's the reason why, again, they're so aggressive, why they're just pretty much ready to do, what they're ready to do, which is to send nukes over there, man. So I'm going to get the book of Isaiah, chapter 54, and verse 16. It says, behold, I have created the smith that bloweth the coals and the fire, and that bringeth forth an instrument for his work. And they have created the waster to destroy. And it's going into, the modern day smith would be, these scientists and physicists that are behind, creating and developing these nuclear missiles, man. And the waster to destroy are the missiles themselves. In particular, the warhead, because that's the part of the missile that does the damage, and that's what is taking place. This is what we're seeing, These scientists, they are the modern day smiths, man, because what does a blacksmith do? They create weapons of war, and this is what these men are doing. They're creating weapons of war, weapons of mass destruction, because that's what these nuclear missiles are going to do, man. They're going to destroy major lands, the main two lands that are going to be destroyed as far as we know, because other lands are going to get hit too, but the only two confirmed lands that we know are going to get hit are America, aka Babylon the Great, which is going to be completely destroyed, and the land of Israel, is going to be destroyed, but it's going to be built back up, because Jerusalem is going to be, the headquarters, the capital of the world, if you will, So staying in Isaiah, I'm going to get Isaiah chapter 9 and verse 5. And it says, for every battle of the warrior is with confused noise and garments rolled in blood. But this shall be with burning and fuel of fire. So, right, man, this isn't going to be a traditional war like, all previous wars have been fought, hand-to-hand combat, men having these different weapons of war, swords, shields, spears, bow and arrows, things of that sort, charging each other in the center of the battlefield, man, And I always make mention that, again, you will have ground troops that are going to be going to war with each other. But this war is primarily going to be fought with these missiles that are on the earth today, man. Because the primary two nations that possess the most missiles are Russia and America, And between the two, Russia has more than America. So again, as prophecy, it goes to show you that Russia is going to destroy America, So I'm going to jump to Isaiah chapter, I went too far. Isaiah chapter 13 and verse 4. It says, the noise of a multitude in the mountains, like as of a great people, a tumultuous noise of the kingdoms of nations gathered together. The Lord of hosts mustereth the battle. Slakia, the Lord of hosts mustereth the hosts of the battle. They come from a far country, from the end of heaven, even the Lord and the weapons of his indignation to destroy the whole land. And right, man, pursuing to, Genesis 27:40, we know that Esau, Edom's blessing, was the sword, which is given to him by our forefather Isaac, but ultimately, these nuclear missiles that are on the earth, these are the Lord's weapons, because this is what he's going to use to take the nation of Edom out of power, man, because Esau came into power by way of violence, and he's going to be taken out of power by way of violence, man. The Lord, the Lord gave this man the technology, to pretty much conquer the world, ultimately to take him out with that same technology, man, because again, in August of this year, it'll mark 80 years since the bombings that took place in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, man, which again, the Japanese are still feeling the effects of those atomic bombs to this day, Like I've done a video on a couple of years ago, you had, a watch that was recovered that was pretty much fused into the very moment that bomb was dropped. And if I'm not mistaken, it was like 8:15. If it wasn't 8:15, like 8:25, I forget the exact time, but that watch was pretty much fused, and it showed you it stuck at the very same time, where that nuke was dropped, man. So that just goes to show you that, again, this man has a lot to pay for, And again, these other nations haven't forgotten, man. And these other nations are angry, at this place, So I'll get the book of Joel chapter 2 and verse 1. It says, blow ye the trumpet in Zion and sound an alarm in my holy mountain. Let all the inhabitants of the land tremble, for the day of the Lord cometh, for it is nigh at hand. A day of darkness and of gloominess, a day of clouds and of thick darkness, as the morning spread upon the mountains, a great people and a strong. There hath not been ever the like, neither shall be any more after it, even to the years of many generations. So, right, man, we know that World War III is, the day of the Lord, because once World War III takes place, man, again, that's it. That's the end all be all, because we also know that in the midst of World War III, our Lord Yahweh Shai is going to make his return, to the earth to take down these nations, man, and to put the earth back in order. This is hence the reason why, the different prophets, they describe the day of the Lord of being this, they say the exact same thing, man. A day of darkness, a day of gloominess, pretty much the day of the Lord not being a good day, man, because again, bad things are going to take place. Of course, something good is going to happen. The elect will be delivered, from the said destruction. But overall, those that are not of the elect, man, they're going to take part in that. At least those that are here in America, whatever other lands are slated to get hit, again, they'll be built back up, after a period of time. But those that are left here on the soils of America will be destroyed, man, And also, this is why these missiles are being created. They're being created for this time that we're in. They're not going to be left. They're not going to be, spared to put in a museum. No, man. It's like every missile that is on this earth is going to be used, during that day. None of them will be spared. Verse 3, a fire devoureth before them, and behind them a flame burneth, And again, going to that rocket propulsion systems that is going to be guiding these missiles to their specific target. says the land is as the Garden of Eden before them, and behind them a desolate wilderness, and yea, it's like a yea, and nothing shall escape them. And right, man, because again, America has been untouched by war, meaning no other country has come up against it. No other country, or nation has invaded America, because just like it also says in that Ezekiel 38, that this is the land of unwalled villages. Anybody can just come over here. Hence the reason why, it's easy for, I wouldn't say, it's easy now, but still, it's easy for, these different nations to just cross the border, because the borders are open. Canada, depending on what part of the U.S. you stay in, you can just walk right across the border. Down south, where Mexico and the United States meet, you can cross the border there. This is the land of unwalled villages, man. And again, also, there's still parts of the U.S. where, the landscape is beautiful, But once these missiles hit, man, that's it. This land is going to be left completely desolate, And it says nothing shall escape them. Obviously, the elect will, but anything else that is left here in America, they're not going to make it, So I'm just going to grab a couple more, and that'll be it. So this is the book of Revelation, chapter 11, and verse 14. It says, the second woe is past, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly. And indeed, man, we're seeing that with these different nations, man, that are going to war with each other. It's all a build up to World War III, because that second war is World War II. That war, came to pass, 1939 to 1945, And again, this war, it's only going to take an hour. It's not going to take years in order for America to be destroyed, So again, the third woe is coming quickly. And they're going to end it with Revelation chapter 9 and verse 15. It says, and the four angels were loosed, which were prepared for an hour and a day and a month and a year, for to slay the third part of men. And again, just like it states in Revelation 7, that you have four literal angels, which are these same angels that are spoken of in this verse, that are holding back the four winds, which the four winds represent the destruction that is going to take place on this earth, because it's appointed for a set time, because there's a particular hour, day, month, and year when this war is going to take place. And it says, for to slay the third part of men, because today you have three classes of men on the earth. You have the sons of God, which are the biblical Israelites, so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, the tribe of Judah, all the way down to the tribe of Issachar. You have the sons of men, which are, the other heathen nations. And you have the sons of the wicked, which are the nation of Edom, the so-called white man. And that's who this destruction is for, Edom, to take Edom out of power, And you will have 2/3 of the nation of Israel that are going to get caught up in this destruction. And whatever heathen nations that are over here in America that have not, returned to their homelands or weren't able to, they're just, over here to make their little money and be destroyed, But this is the time we're in, man. Pursuant to Ecclesiastes chapter 3 and verse 8, we're in a time of war right now. We're in a time of war, and we're seeing that, So, Lord willing, this lesson was edifying. I want to give all praise, honor, and glory due to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakak Wadash. I'd like to give double honors unto the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who I learned this truth from. And I'd like to say peace and salutations unto the hopefully elect. Till the next time I say shalom.